starts, why don't we give them a little sneak peek from behind the scenes on who's on set with us?
It's our pleasure to welcome this fellow I've known since the mid-'80s, and always been one of my favorite people of all time, and arguably, and in my book, best quarterback in Wahoo history.
I'm going to throw this out there, and we'll have this conversation on the show. Is it up for debate? We might catch some heat from that. I'm going to catch some heat for that. I don't think it's up for debate.
Not in my book, it's not. I know some other people might argue about Matt Schaub and Aaron Brooks and Bryce Perkins, but to me, number 12 is the GOAT.
I clear cut up my book, and it's not just because he's sitting next to us. We've said this buku times on this program, ladies and gentlemen. We'll welcome folks in Richmond, Virginia here on the show, Northern Virginia on the show, Southwestern Virginia, Crozet, Ivy, folks in North Downtown watching the program here in Charlottesville. I see the hot spots around Scott Stadium right now. We got folks in Pennsylvania and Allentown watching the show, Buckhead, Georgia watching the program. Wyoming is in the house. Viewers and listeners, like and share the show. If you have a question for, I think, the undisputed best gunslinger in the history of Wahoo Nation, Sean Moore in the house, baby. Judah Wickhauer behind the camera. Every team needs a glue guy. That's our glue guy over there.
Okay.
He may not show up in the box score, but without this guy, we don't get to victory lane.
Totally.
This is the glue guy right here. Judah Wickhauer, my friend, we are in your hands. Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for watching the Jerry and Jerry Show. We are live in downtown Charlottesville, about a mile and change from Scott Stadium, where we hope the 2024 football season will have a bowl game appearance on the horizon. Time will tell. As we've said on the Jerry and Jerry Show in episodes past, the Wahoo football team is going to have to make hay early in the season because that back portion of the schedule is pretty darn difficult. We have a guest today that we're so very excited about. Sean Moore is in the house and in the studio, a guest lined up by the undisputed Hall of Fame Virginia sports writer, a man who needs no introduction, a household name, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. Judah Wickhauer, if you can go to the studio camera, and then welcome the star of our program, Hootie in the house. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, and really excited about the show today. And
same. Can you tell?
Sean and I were in the same Hall of Fame class. And,
that's right.
In fact, I owe him some gratitude because my voice got a little squeaky when I started thinking family and friends in my speech, and I heard a deep voice behind me say, "Come on, big man." and I got my act together and finished. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
We have questions already poured in for Sean. For those that do not know you, how about an introduction, Sean Moore, to the viewers and listeners on today's talk show?
It is a pleasure to be here. I appreciate all the compliments. I feel like I'm so out of date, when it comes to this generation recalling my athletic accolades. But I'm a 1990 graduate, University of Virginia, 2-year captain, and I've been involved in the athletic department now. This is my third go-round. So student athlete from 86 to 90, came back, coached from 2010 to 2013, and then returned in 2021 shortly after COVID, and been back going on 4 years now, working for Carla Williams as Associate AD for development for football, and just super excited to be back in Charlottesville, which is always home to me. Lived here 3 times and super excited about the 3rd time.
Well, let me add a couple other things
please.
that he's too modest. He left out. Number 12's jersey is retired at UVA. He was a 3-year starter starting around 87 or 88, somewhere in there. He was the ACC Player of the Year in 1990, All-American. When he left the program, he held 40-some records, either UVA, ACC, or NCAA. He still holds the record for some of those, including being responsible for 83 touchdowns, which is still a record, school record. He finished fourth in the Heisman Trophy voting that year, and I thought he probably should have finished higher. Of course, he and Herman split that vote. Herman
I was going to say that.
Sixth, I think,
He took some of my
or
votes.
something like that. And at that time, that was the most, the highest finished of any ACC player in the Heisman Trophy race. So lots of other things. 6,629 passing yards for his career, 55 touchdowns passing, 1,268 yards rushing, 28 rushing touchdowns. The man could do it all.
And one thing we should highlight, I first arrived to Grounds as a first year in 2000, so I was smack dab in the Matty Schaub era right there. But why I'm going to go on the record and say Sean Moore was the top gunslinger and Wahoo Nation was the team success. You should highlight that because with the
absolutely.
position, team success is key when it comes to quarterback play, Hootie.
Yeah, well, he was a quarterback that led him to UVA's only 10-win season in history in 1989. The following year, 1990.
We can follow you around all day, Sean, if you want us to.
in 1990, when he was, and that '89 team was ACC champions. Duke claims some of that, but we know what the real story is. You guys kicked their ass.
Head to head.
And 1990, he led Virginia to the #1 ranking in the nation and to a Sugar Bowl bid. And
one of my favorite memories
Unbelievable.
Dad went to UVA, brother went to UVA, I went to UVA, would love it, the boys went to UVA. My favorite, I'd say right there with the national championship with basketball, #1 in the rankings. That is something I will never forget, especially as an impressionable, young teen. I want to throw this to you here. We'll get out of your way.
All good.
When you hear these accolades and this kind of statistical and team dominance with you at the helm, what's it mean to you?
So, I said this in my Virginia Sports Hall of Fame speech. It's really for me. It was about the players that I played with. There were a lot of great players on those teams. Starting in '89, it was an experienced team. Ray Savage was captain with myself and Jeff Lagerman. So we had some. You're talking about a lot of guys who played in the NFL. Like, I talk about this all the time when I talk to people about those past teams. 88, 89, and 90, there were probably over 25 guys that went on to play in the NFL at some point. That's a lot of talent. And you credit George Welsh and his staff, in terms of recruiting. A lot of guys were from the state of Virginia, and we just, really, I hate to say it, I sound like Cam Newton being the ultimate game manager of that team, but that's what it took. Obviously it takes great leadership, but to be on a team like that with all those weapons, both on offense and defense, it was extraordinary for me. It really was. A lot of great players.
Well, it took a special guy to run that. I remember asking George when I wrote the book about the history of Virginia football about you and coming along from Martinsville Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. And George said he was the perfect guy at the perfect time. And expound on this a little bit. Gary Tranquil, who I thought was brilliant as the offensive coordinator, the offense you guys ran was unbelievable. You ran some
10 personnel, 4 wides.
Yeah. You could run the wishbone. you could run the pistol. You could run it. You could throw. You could do everything.
So one of the things that I've always credited Gary Tranquil for a lot of the success of those teams and myself, because you said it, one of the most brilliant minds in terms of offense. Gary Tranquil was the head coach at Naval Academy in 1987, 88. 1986 and 85 and 86. When he came to Virginia in 87, it's just a guy who had to humble himself, come in as a head coach from Naval Academy, came here as the offensive coordinator under Coach Welsh, And basically, everyone just like, he changed the whole concept of the offense. I mean, we could go what they call 23 personnel now, where you line up with 3 tight ends and 2 backs in the backfield and myself and just pound you. Or he could go 4 wides, which at that time wasn't done a lot. University of Houston was doing what they called, what was it called, the run and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
We could line up in 4 wides and do that. We could line up in 21 personnel, just standard tight end, 2 backs. It was, the guy's mind was brilliant in terms of what he brought to this offense. And to utilize weapons like Herman Moore and Terry Kirby and Nicky Fisher and even guys like Terry Tomlin and Derek Dooley, everyone had a hand in that success. And Tranquil's, the way he would game plan each week to prepare for other teams was amazing. You know, we didn't really change our philosophy. We would add, like what you see today in NFL, a lot of movement and motions and flops to the tight end switching sides, so you couldn't, you know, base the strength on your offense. It was incredible playing under Tranquil. Every week it was exciting, and as I said, you know, a year ago, I attribute a lot of my success to that man because his mind offensively was incredible. The guy left UVA when I graduated and went to the Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns quarterbacks coach.
Coach Bernie Kosar
Yep.
and that whole crew, and then came back to college.
To Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, right. I know. You know, I had to hear that a couple weeks ago. He came back to Virginia Tech and, you know, coached one of my home guys, Maurice DeShazo. So,
And then back to UVA for a round 2?
Yep, sure did.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of my favorite people, one of the best coaches I've ever played for. And like I said, a lot of my success is attributed to him.
And the guy that lured him to Cleveland was Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick,
who was the
man.
head coach, and I think
A young generation, they don't know anything about all this change
Yeah.
back then. It was crazy.
Al Grove was on the staff.
Yeah.
I think Nick Saban might have been
Saban,
on that
yep.
staff.
Yep.
Can we make this call? And this is a question for you, Hootie, and for you, Sean. Can we make the call that during your time it was the peak of performance for Virginia football in the history of Virginia football? I mean, I think we could say safely 2019 with basketball, with the national championship, was the peak of the basketball program, at least so far. Was your era the peak of football?
I'll give you a quick. So 86, my first year, and coincidentally, we're celebrating the first ACC championship team October 5th when we play Boston College for homecoming. So there's a lot of guys coming back. Guys have been hitting me up left and right. They're coming back, guys from that team. But the 86 team was my first year, and I would say more than 90% of my class played. Well, 90% of my class was redshirted, but in 87, all of us played. Everyone in that class played, contributed in some fashion. 86, we were 3-8. 87, we were 8-4, and we went to the All-American Bowl, beat BYU in a bowl game. That's when it changed. And then 88, 89, and 90, I started and was surrounded by all my teammates that came in with me. So by the time we got to 1990, there were like 15 fifth-year seniors. So we had a super experienced team. But 87 was a bowl. 88, we missed the bowl. We didn't go to a bowl in 88, and we were at 7-4. We had a really good team at the end of the year. 7-4 now, you're in the New Year's Day Bowl.
100%. 100%.
You know? So we're 7-4, missed the bowl game, was really playing well at the end of the season. And in 89, you know, besides the thrashing against Notre Dame, the first game of the year, we won 9 straight and then went to a bowl, finished with 10 wins. And then 90 team obviously was you know, monumental because we started the season 7-0, #1 in the country. So it's safe to say that there was some really good teams back then. From 87 on, I mean, you're talking about, you know, expected to play in a bowl, expected to compete for a championship every year.
And
You want to hit that?
That 89 team, still unbelievable. And one of my favorite games that I've ever covered at Virginia was, well, I went up to the Meadowlands with you guys, and Notre Dame was defending national champions.
Right.
In fact, that's the last time they won the national championship. And they almost repeated, but you guys got beat. But then the next game you had to go to Penn
Penn
State.
State, and they were ranked top
And
10.
and you guys upset Penn State there in Nittany Stadium.
Yeah.
And you threw 2 touchdowns in a 14-6 win. You guys led 14-0 at halftime, and you had a spectacular day yourself. Let's see, I wrote it down here somewhere.
Defense played well that day too. It's funny how I can
Yeah.
remember things about certain games, but defensively, like that was a hard-fought defensive game, and I think we opened early. That was like when basically you would call it like kind of a week 0 game because it was a Meadowland Classic. So Penn State was playing their first game. We already had a game under our belt, but we went in there and punched them in the mouth, like physically just dominated the game.
14 of 25 passing for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns at Penn State.
I'll take that.
In front of 85,000
Yeah.
people,
I'll take
I
that.
think.
Both touchdowns with the Herman, but they were
Yeah.
both like fabulous catches. But yeah, that was a physical mauling in Happy Valley, where that's when we realized we were pretty good. You know, after getting demolished against Notre Dame, I mean it was hard. Like we thought we had a good team coming back from '88. You know, finished the season on a 5-game win streak, and then '89 you get punched in the mouth by Notre Dame. But after the Penn State game, we knew we were onto something, and obviously that team, that it's funny that we lost to Clemson at Clemson in '89. I didn't play. I got hurt against William and Mary the week before. Just shouldn't have been in the game. The game was over, and I went down on the sideline, hit my shoulder on the artificial turf. So I missed the Clemson game. But it was a great game in Death Valley. Matt Blunden came in, played well. We just didn't have enough ammunition for them. But then to win the ACC championship that year, as Jerry said, we had shared with Duke, but head-to-head we beat them by 32 points. So I don't know how you would come up with a co-champ in the year in '89.
That was Steve
That was
Spurrier's
ridiculous. Yeah, Spurrier and I got
Mouth
into a
of
little
the
sparring match.
Questions coming in already for Sean. We'll relay some of these on air. This question's coming in from McLean. George Welsh, after the loss to Notre Dame, what did he do to motivate you guys going into Penn State?
George Welsh, I don't think he had to do anything. He's the type of coach that George and Joe Paterno was cut from the same cloth. So I don't think we did anything different. We just went back to the drawing board and worked our butt off. And the next week, think about that. That's really a road game. We're playing in New York, in New Jersey. Notre Dame, huge alumni following. And so, they were really the home team.
I mean, we saw that when Notre Dame came to Scott Stadium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to go to Penn State the next week, 2 weeks in a row, you're on the road against a national powerhouse. So we just came together, worked our butt off, and it was shown in the game because we physically dominated Penn State that next week. And then, like I said, went on a hell of a run after that.
Who do you want to jump in? I got tons of questions coming in here for Sean.
Yeah, I mean that was just an incredible season, and it led to 1990, and George talked about that offense in particular being the best offense he's ever been around in college football, and that included all the Penn State ones when he was the backfield.
George said that?
There. Yeah. And I mean that's high
Yeah,
cutting when
that is high compliment,
when he talks about that.
Right.
And, I mean, you guys just rolled that year. You and Herman led the nation as a passing combo duo, unstoppable.
Yeah.
You two.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I'm still amazed that George said that.
Really?
It's like Nick Saban giving a compliment,
Well, yeah, you're right. It is.
Seriously.
And he, he didn't pass out compliments very
Yeah,
easy.
that's
for
true.
Sure.
Bill McChesney says this: I've hated Steve Spurrier ever since that Duke tie. That was some BS right there.
George
ladies,
Welsh didn't like him either.
multiple ladies are asking how old Sean is and giving the man some props right now on the feed here. Dude does not. What, 56? Dude does
56,
not
yeah.
look 56 over here. Doesn't look a day over 36,
Come on,
ladies over here.
come on.
No BS, Sean. No BS.
Come on.
Multiple people are asking for your best George Welsh stories. How about I throw in, if we're doing the flip book of you at, coming to UVA, your football career, talk to us about recruiting. Why UVA? Who else was in the mix? What pushed you over the edge to come to Charlottesville?
I was at a golf outing with Brett Pry about a month ago. Chris Slade and I were up in Southwest Virginia with Coach Pry. And I told him this story, and I said, I don't know how many times I've shared this. I haven't shared it often, but I grew up in Southwest Virginia. Martinsville, really closer to Virginia Tech than Charlottesville. And so I spent a lot of time on campus at Tech. Like, I literally went there every week for football games. It got to the point where they were pretty much knew that I was going to go to school there. I had a cousin who played there in the early 80s opposite Bruce Smith, Jesse Penn. He's a great player. So they expected me. So I visited UNC, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Maryland. And I took a visit to Tennessee, but I wasn't going to go to Tennessee. So it was really down to Virginia Tech and Maryland. And I committed to Virginia Tech on my visit, like verbally committed to them. And so, I mean, it was a wrap. They knew I was coming. Coach Dooley was the coach. I'll never forget, Tom Fletcher was the recruiting coordinator. And it was a wrap. I was going there. But I had a visit scheduled to Virginia as well. And so it was kind of a quiet commitment. So I came to Virginia, and then everything flipped. I met Antonio Rice here, who's one of my closest friends today. He was my host, and just really, my parents really fell in love with Charlottesville. As I said in my Virginia Hall of Fame speech, by the time we got to the barn, it was a wrap. We went to Aberdeen Barn, had dinner, met the players, the coaches, and it was a wrap. And so then I verbally committed to Virginia and changed my commitment, and then the rest is history. So, but it was close. Like I could have easily ended up in Blacksburg, easily, because it was so close to home. It was so I was familiar. I knew my way around campus. I knew everything about the place.
Aberdeen Barn must have helped attract
I
a
was
bunch
gonna
of
say, dude.
football players.
How many
here over
commitments
those
have happened at
years.
the barn? And the crazy thing is, the barn probably not even changed since you went there.
Oh, the same people work there.
Same people, same staff, same
Shout out to
looking
my man Derek. He still works there.
It's part of the
Still.
charm, yeah.
That is part of the charm.
Yeah.
30 plus years.
What do you remember about this time, Hootie?
I remember I didn't know that he had committed to Virginia Tech at the time, but all eyes in Charlottesville were on Sean Moore because we knew how much Virginia wanted him. Danny Wilmer talked about him all the time, and
That was my guy.
a friend of mine that worked for me at one time, Dave Scarangella, was the sports editor at the Martinsville paper, and so I was talking to him a lot about Sean, and everybody in the state of Virginia was excited about him because they knew the potential he had. I mean, nobody ever expected him to lead Virginia to ACC championships and number one, but everybody knew that he was going to be a really, really good quarterback. And I remember when you first came in, I guess, against Georgia, right?
Ooh, good memory, Jerry. Good God.
Down between the hedges. I was at that game.
1987.
And I remember him coming in. I'm saying, okay, here we go.
Yeah, I don't understand. I will never understand Coach Welch's philosophy because Scott Seekuse when I first got here, Don Mikowski was the quarterback. And Don and I are good friends. We roomed together on the road. And then when Donnie graduated, Seekuse inherited the position, 1987. First game at Georgia, and they told me, they say, you're going to play. And I'm like, Georgia was still, they were still Georgia.
Yeah.
We go down between the hedges, and we're up 14-0. Seeks his 2 touchdown pass. He's on fire. And George looks at me and says, get ready. I'm like, what, are you crazy? Like, we're up 14-0. You're going to put a first-year quarterback in the game. I literally went in the game, and the tides changed. Next thing you know, it's 14-14. And then Georgia starts to dominate. The run game started to just pound us. And then I went back in the fourth quarter and led a touchdown drive. And I think we lost by 10. But the fact that he put me in the thick of it, 14-0 lead, and he just put me in just to get some experience. Like, I thought it was wild. Like, you wouldn't see that today. But I guess George knew what he was doing because the next week I played against Maryland, played against Virginia Tech, and then CQ started to kind of separate himself, and we won the rest of our games, the rest of the season, ended up in a bowl.
Questions coming in for him here. This is a tough question for you. Best football player you've played with at the University of Virginia. And I'll add a second part to that. Best football player you played against in college football. 2-part question.
Ooh. Best player I've played with at Virginia. rest in peace, my man, Darrell Hammond. Darrell and I came in together. Darrell was a junior college transfer from Ferrum College. And coincidentally, he and I were on our visit together at Virginia Tech. And he committed to Tech as well. I'll never forget. And Darrell was one of my closest friends, passed away about 7 years ago of ALS, but one of my closest friends. But Darrell came in, he would have been a junior when I was first year, so he was a third year, but played both sides of the ball, played safety and receiver. That just shows you his versatility. One of the most incredible athletes I've ever seen, and in my opinion, like the best football player I've ever played with. And football probably wasn't even his best sport, because he played basketball for UVA as well. So he would play basketball in training camp. Dude was unbelievable. Scratch golfer, by far, best football player, best athlete I've ever come across. Best player I ever played against. It's funny, I'm going to give kudos to this guy, because he didn't necessarily have the greatest NFL career. He played in NFL, but in college, he was just a nuisance for me. A strong safety for NC State, Jesse Campbell. Jesse Campbell was a monster. He was all-conference player, player of the year in the ACC back then, and was just a really good football player. And by far, like he was a nag. Like he was all. When we played them, he just destroyed me every time, and I couldn't get away from him. But one of the best players by far. Didn't have the greatest NFL career, but was a fabulous college football player.
What was the 1990 season like, Sean? I mean, you guys, I remember we went out to Kansas to open the season, and Warren Swain, the play-by-play guy back in those days, and I flew out to Kansas earlier in the month of August and interviewed their head coach and some players, and I think they were terrified of what they thought you guys were going to be, and it was one of the hottest days in history, it seemed
You know, it's funny you say that. Like, I remember very well preparing for that game. Not because think about it. We never went outside of the ACC to play any games. You know, furthest north we went was Maryland. The furthest west we went, may have been like a Tennessee over the course of time. But to play in Kansas, we didn't have a clue. And I think everyone on our team, we were scared. We were nervous. We didn't know what we were getting involved with, like playing Kansas, because it was a Big 8 back then, right?
Yeah.
So we were all nervous, and the fact that it was over 110 degrees on the field, they had artificial turf, nervous as hell. But after the first quarter, we were like laughing, joking in the huddle, like, all right, let's see if we can get 50 today. And sure enough, we scored 59. I was done by the third quarter, and it's just like, we were like, okay, I don't know if this team is that bad or if we're just that good. And it turned out it was probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
They weren't very good, and we were very good. But we hung 59 on them. And then it was just one of the few games we had 50, because we had 50 several times that year. I think we put 50 on Duke. So, the 90 season, for me, I've said this before, by the time we got to around October, it just, we started slowly climbing up the polls. And when we got in the top 10, we were like, you know what, we really are that good. Mm-hmm. And when we reached number one, it was funny because, Chris Slade, one of my closest friends, we had an off week, and someone lost, and it pushed us to one. And Slade and I were like, are you kidding me? Like, so we took advantage of our notoriety in town. Like, we ate out for free. We hung out. We were rock stars. Charlottesville was on fire back then because, football, they were, printing shirts and hats, talking about our number one ranking. So it was a fun time to be here. But if you were a player, like myself and Chris, we took advantage of all the popularity in town. And
give us some example. Day in the life of Sean then.
Well, I was in grad school, so I only had 3 classes.
You had time.
I had a lot of time.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with Gary Tranquil in the office, in football office, just kind of game planning and preparing for the week. But in my off time, it was a lot of video games, a lot of eating out, and a lot of hanging out. I'd pull my car up on campus and just hang out and people watch. Let's just say I was people watching. But it was a lot of that. and I enjoyed it. Like it was a fabulous year for me. But I wouldn't trade it in for anything. Like that's, people ask me a lot. I graduated after the '89 season in the fall of '90, in the spring of '90, and I came back for my 5th year. And there were conversations about whether or not I would come back because I had opportunities to go play professionally. And I actually even talked to representatives about representing me, which probably is illegal. But I was having a great time in Charlottesville, and I was like, why would I go play pro ball? And I'm enjoying this is like the best time of my life. So it was no question like whether or not I was coming back. I don't think the coaches even questioned. They were like, of course he's coming back for a 5th year. So. But the '90 season was absolutely incredible. Great time to be in Charlottesville.
It was madness here every weekend. Well, even leading up to the games, I've never seen Charlottesville quite like that.
Yeah.
And I remember UVA would, if it was a home game on Friday nights, you guys were locked away in a hotel somewhere, but they would host a big party for all the visiting media and the TV people that were coming in to televise the game. They were getting national media coming in here every weekend. They were the Cinderella story of the nation, and it was just wild times. And he's right. Charlottesville was on fire. I remember for the Georgia Tech game. It was pretty late in the season, and we thought we had written everything you could write about a football team, and we had a publisher then that said, we're putting out a 48-page special section on this game, and I want nothing but fresh material. so we, and George was going crazy because he didn't like all that publicity.
He liked the attention.
And
I got another story for you. So
we named it that paper The Thrilla in Charlottesville.
I was sitting at right across from the barn back then.
Aberdeen Barn, guys.
Aberdeen Barn,
Yeah.
right across from the barn at the time was a Red Lobster.
Okay.
This is a long time ago. And I wasn't a big seafood eater back then. Now I am. But I went in there with 3 teammates. And sitting in a booth was Lou Gossett Jr., at the time one of my favorite actors. And I wanted to speak to him, and the security was like, "No, he doesn't. We don't play that." So I'm like, "All right, man, the hell with him then." And he saw kind of our reaction, and he invited us to come over, and we ended up getting to know him. And he was filming Toy Soldiers, an old school movie, out at the Miller School.
Oh, absolutely.
And he invited the three of teammates and I. We went out and we sat on the set and watched the filming of the movie and spent some time with him. I still have pictures to this day. But when he saw us, he was like, "Are you guys athletes?" We were like, "Yeah." And so we talked about obviously the season we were having, and it just kind of caught his attention. And he passed away recently, but when I saw that, I immediately thought of that time frame back in '90 when he was here filming Toy Soldiers.
I love that story. We can speak with Sean all day. We're mindful of his time. He's got a meeting coming up here. Why don't we close with this here? Thoughts on the program today? A guy who we all bleed orange and blue here. Love to see us get back to bowl games and to the level where you had us, where Coach Grove for some seasons had us. Open-ended question for you. Program today, what you think about 2024, what's on the horizon?
So I'm excited. Most people are nervous about all the changes going on in college athletics. I think with the Big Ten expanding and the SEC expanding, also the ACC expanding with Cal and SMU and Stanford, I'm excited. I think the schedule is interesting. Most people expect there's some thought that we could have some early success, and then the back half of the schedule is harder. But if you just think about historically, like last year, there were some hard games, perceived hard games, going to Maryland and going to BC, some tough games. But in my opinion, if you're not in that upper echelon, that top 5 of the Texas and Georgias of the world, college football, with the way that's set up now with the portal and NIL, there's an opportunity to get really good really quickly. So I think we've upgraded the talent. it's going to be super exciting to see that talent, how it translates on the field early on. And I think there's an opportunity for some early success. I do. I believe that. And I think if we can have some success early, I think that will transition into October, November. And I
1,000% agree with that.
yeah, I think there's a chance for postseason play. I do. There's more depth now. You know, we got a chance to see the team on Saturday. Defensively, you know, there's a lot of guys returning. Offensively, it's going to be interesting to see who separates themselves at the quarterback position. But I like both guys, and I'm super excited to see that first game. You know, to get a preview of what's to come this fall.
Well said. I mean, you have a chance to go maybe 4-1, 5-0 to start the season, and when you're playing with confidence, anything can happen in the back portion of the schedule.
Anything.
Especially with young guys like this. If this offensive line comes together, you got two guys be under center that have upside. You got a tailback that started at Clemson. You got a wide receiver that is, Tony Elliott called him the fastest guy he's ever seen, coming from Notre Dame. I mean, anything can happen if they go 4-1, 5-0 to start. I'm hopeful.
Likewise.
I'm hopeful. Any closing thoughts there, Hootie?
I just want to thank Sean for taking some time out of his schedule. I know he's a busy dude. He's raised money for the master plan and helped raise money for the Hardy Football Operations Center over there, which is...
Man's got the Midas touch over here.
Yeah, he does.
Everything he's touching is good.
I can just imagine what it's like when some of these CEOs and people around the country, when Sean comes knocking on their door, I imagine they get a little giddy, just like they did when Barry Parkhill would come by.
Yeah, got to keep knocking.
Yeah, like we are right now.
Keep knocking.
We appreciate you. Judah, if you want to give some direction to our esteemed guests here, and Hootie and I will continue on the show if you want to go to a two-shot. This is a heck of an interview, Hootie Ratcliffe.
It was fun.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
For those who are asking, the interview archive wherever you get your social media and podcasting content. Sean Moore, absolutely amazing interview right now. Believe heading to the football program for a meeting as we speak. You have a good one, Sean. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was fun. I've interviewed him a million times over the years, and it never gets old because he has so many great stories and is such a great story. It was such an incredible time in Virginia sports history, covering some of those teams that he was on, and it would be great to see them be able to get back to that kind of success again with a lot of Virginia homemade players and try to be a factor in the ACC. It's difficult to do because, you know, people who have studied Virginia's history in football know that it's an incredible challenge to reach that level. And that, I mean, they have three ACC championships since the early 50s, and that's, you know, here we are in 2024. So that shows you how hard it is.
I'll throw this to you. And viewers and listeners, I see a lot of people asking. The show will be archived on jerryratcliffe.com, anywhere you get your podcasting content. Hootie Ratcliffe set up that interview. We're looking to do more interviews on the Jerry and Jerry Show. The man's got a network and a Rolodex that's deeper than anyone. Hootie Ratcliffe, the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer. You know, with the Al Groh years, when Coach Groh was winning 8-9 games regularly in a bowl game, was it back-to-back Continental Tire Bowls?
Yep.
If memory serves correct.
Yep.
When Coach Welsh was at its peak here, they put a flag in the Commonwealth and said, we're going to own the top talent in Virginia. Coach London tried to do that. He had some success with recruiting. We would have liked to see the performance on the field a little bit differently. Coach London having success at William & Mary. Put that question to you. Owning the Commonwealth's talent when it comes to Coach Elliott and this program moving forward and the impact or influence that could have.
Well, there's usually plenty of talent in the state, and the difficulty not only for Virginia but for Virginia Tech is to keep it in state, because they get rated by a lot of other ACC schools and now a lot of national schools. You see Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. A lot of those schools will come in here and try to take some of the top talent, and have been very successful in doing so. But I remember Frank Beamer telling me one time, and said this several times. He said, "There's enough talent in this state to go around for two." At that time, there was only two FBS teams in the state, Tech and UVA. Now there's several.
I mean, now you got JMU and Liberty competing for this talent.
Yeah, and ODU.
And ODU.
But there is enough to go around, and they, if Tech and UVA can find a way to keep the majority of that talent in the state, it's going to show up in the record as we go.
We got a fan trying to come in here to see Sean Moore live during the talk show right now. Our director just sprinted out of the studio.
That's like Ralph Sampson. He draws a crowd everywhere he goes.
He was absolutely fantastic. The impact of having alumni around the program. Your thoughts on that?
It's huge, and I know that Sean is engaged in trying to get a lot of those football alumni re-engaged with the football program. I think that slipped some during the Bronco era.
100%.
And so, Sean is busy trying to regain that relationship with a lot of the former players. And I know the Virginia Football Alumni Club, which I do some volunteer work for to try to help them spread their organization, is big on that. They've come up with a program, Who's Make a Difference, or something to that effect, and they honor a former player every home game. Somebody's gone on to be successful off the field as well as on the field. And it's a big deal. And you heard Sean mention that they're going to celebrate their first ACC championship sometime in October.
October of this year.
And
he said a boatload of alumni, the big-time alumni coming back.
Yeah, and that's big because there were a lot of really great players on that team particularly. So it's huge. If you watch college football as much as I do on Saturdays, or every day of the week now, but you'll often see the TV cameras and the play-by-play guy or the color guy focus in on those various schools and some of their alumni standing on the sideline.
On the sidelines, interacting with the players during the game.
Yeah, so I think we may see more of that now with Sean being so involved.
Yeah, because it's great for the brand's trajectory. Like having the alumni interacting with the players on the sidelines gives the media, the play-by-play guy, a narrative to tell. Oh, Sean Moore was here. At one time, Virginia football was #1 in the nation. All-American, All-ACC performer, throwing the ball to Herman Moore, who played in the National Football League with the Detroit Lions. Terry Kirby, as a jack-of-all-trades tailback, could run it, could catch it, could do everything out of the backfield. And when you're able to tell that narrative on national television, it's just good for impressionable teenagers and players that are watching. Oh, Virginia's had greatness at one time.
Yeah, because a lot of these kids don't know.
They don't know.
They have no idea.
Right.
And it's
I was talking
very
with
important.
To put that in perspective, I was having dinner and someone recognized us from this talk show, and it was a dad, and he had his son, 12, 13-year-old, remembered the Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter team in the national championship, and could give statistics from that team like it was no problem. Then I mentioned Joe Harris, Sean Singletary. I mentioned Sam Hauser, guys like that. Who are those guys? Memories are short.
Yeah, and especially for some of the young kids, they, until they're maybe, some kids obviously become fans when they're really young, but some kids are kind of oblivious to various programs until they get recruited by that program. So you're right. A lot of people aren't aware of some of the past deeds, and you have to do your research.
Can you put in perspective, #1, Virginia football? Sean did. but when the team was ranked number one, when you were covering this team, what Charlottesville was like, is it at all comparable at all to Ralph Mania?
Those are the only two times that would fit in that category in my 40. This will be my 43rd college football season at Virginia. I've had some more before that, but the Ralph Sampson days in basketball and that era of Virginia football, the late 80s, stretching into the 90s, all the way up to 98. But the 90s season was unbelievable. It was built off of the 89 season, and that team doesn't get enough accolades. The only 10-win, it's hard to believe it's the only 10-win team in UVA history.
Yeah.
But 90 was, and it helped set up the 90 team and got fans really interested in Virginia football again. And they were having, of course, Scott Stadium was only seated like 40,000 or something back in those days. So every game became a sellout, and it was hard to get tickets, believe it or not. And every week, as Virginia continued to obliterate opponents, I mean, their games weren't even close. They were just blowing everybody out, putting up incredible numbers. That's why George called that the best offense he had ever been around, including a Penn State offense that had Lydell Mitchell and Franco Harris in the backfield at the same time. Both went on to be great pro football players, and they had a good quarterback too at the time. So that offense could do everything. It was a good defense. It wasn't the greatest defense in the world, but it was good enough to get the job done most of the time. And I remember Joe Krivak telling, who was the coach at Maryland, telling George that he had questions about whether that defense could win a national championship kind of game, which the Georgia Tech game turned out to kind of be. Two undefeated teams that late in the season playing each other with all eyes in the country on that game and that team. And the drama just built week after week after week. And everywhere you went in town, people were just on fire with Virginia football. It was just crazy. It was a party atmosphere every week, all week. Everybody looking forward to the games, talking about the games. It was dominated the conversation in the entire city and the entire state, really, because they picked up a lot of fans who obviously didn't go to Virginia, but they loved Virginia and loved what they were doing.
It was that's when I started following Virginia football, being dragged to the games. My brother and I, by my father, a UVA grad, we went to Scott Stadium often during the Sean Moore era, and that was my brother and I's first taste, and we've been hooked ever since. Memories I'll never ever forget with my dad and my mom and my brother coming up here. Some of my most cherished memories of childhood. This football team, to get back to that, it's a long way to go. How do we do it?
Wow, I don't know. I think they're making all the right moves by
the new facility,
the new Hardy Football Operations Center, which is huge, because at that time for those guys, the McHugh Center was new and state of the art and kind of a draw. Helped them attract some of the better players in the state. Prior to some of George's success here, when George first came here, they couldn't even get some of the better players in the state to even agree to come for a visit. So they had a lot of work to do to convince players they could come here and win. The McHugh Center helped. Winning helped. George Welsh obviously was a Hall of Fame coach and pulled off what I think may be one of the best coaching jobs in the history of college football, the way he reversed fortune of the program here. Virginia was the laughing stock of college football. Back in those days, they had a national thing, you know about the top 10 and the AP poll and all that stuff, coaches poll. Back then, they had a thing called the bottom 10. What's this guy would put together a bottom 10 teams in the country every week, and would, he had a lot of funny one-liners and stuff he would point. But Virginia was in that thing all the time, and at one time had the nation's longest losing streak. So for him to do what he did and turn this program around was unbelievable. I think they're making the right moves. I don't know. I don't know if they can reach that height again or not. I think it's probably harder now
It's way harder now.
than it used to be.
Way harder now.
Because there's so much money and with the NIL and the transfer portal. The transfer portal can help you. NIL can if you can compete with it, but you're not going to win many recruiting battles with some of the top programs in the country because of NIL. But you can get your share of good football players. It's a matter of coaching them up and having a coaching staff that can bring out the best in these guys. And it takes a little luck, but it takes an awful lot of work. I don't know. It's they've got a long climb to get back into the upper half of the ACC.
Gene Dalton watching the program
Love Gene Dalton.
says, "Hey Hootie, so great to see your show. He loves it." Gene Dalton giving you some props.
Gene Dalton and I worked at the Southwest Times in Pulaski, Virginia, my first job. And he was a press man and went on to become one of the best photographers in the country. For us at those papers down there, it was New River Valley newspapers. Then I lured him to Danville when I went there, and then Roanoke stole him. And he went on to blossom in Roanoke and before he retired, but marvelous photographer.
Mark Brown watching the program. He says, "I absolutely love this show. I look forward to this show every Tuesday. I have a question. Do they let people view the new football facility? And gentlemen," he says, "keep up the great work."
I meant to ask about that. We should have asked Sean. We would have, if he'd have been here a little longer, we probably would have talked about that.
I mean, we could have spent 2 hours, 3 hours with Sean.
Because he's had a lot to do with the success of putting that building up. But I don't know the answer to that.
I would hope the answer is yes.
I would think sometime they would have to have some kind of a way for fans to come in and view the building. And maybe because it's so beautiful and has so many really cool features to it. They should show it off. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you have to schedule visits or if there's this a certain time or if they don't allow it. I don't know, because it's essentially the football player's home, and I don't know how they handle the public. We'll find out, though.
This question's come in for you. What's your short list of the greatest quarterbacks for Virginia?
Well, you got Sean, you got Matt Schaub, you got Aaron Brooks, who never really fulfilled his greatness in college. He went on to be a much greater quarterback in the NFL. They never
the New Orleans Saints.
They never really were able to tap into his full potential here. And of course, Bryce Perkins was amazing. Broke a lot of records in only 2 years. He broke some records held by previous guys who played here for 4 years. I think Mike Groh was a very underrated quarterback. He led them to a lot of greatness, and then Don Majkowski was terrific as well. I mean, Majkowski ended up in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame.
Fork Union Military Academy Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And Scott Secules was pretty darn good. Armstrong had his moments.
Blunden had his moments.
Matt Blunden had his moments. Went the entire 90
without a pick.
One season without throwing an interception until the Gator Bowl, where Oklahoma found a way to stop him. But He went on and played for the Kansas City Chiefs behind Joe Montana. But they've produced a lot of really good quarterbacks over the years.
You got to throw Biscuit Higgins in the mix.
Yeah, that's right. Marcus Higgins, that dadgum number 18. We never could stop that dadgum number 18 who tormented Bobby Bowden in 2005 with a brilliant football game. So many great quarterbacks here, and that's what they need. They need one of these guys now to
That's what it is.
Elevate their game. It's hard to do without a good trigger man.
100%. And that's why I'm such a proponent and fan of Calandria. As a second year, you could build a brand or revitalize the brand and the program around him. He's got the looks, he's got the swagger, he's got the mentality, the flair. If he can limit the mistakes, which I think he can, and get some protection, you have a face of the program.
Absolutely. And we may see that. Who knows? But
because they need that. I mean, if you think about it, who has been the face of the program? I mean, Bryce Perkins of late, yes, the team's underachieved. Who has been the face of the program, would you say, over the last 5-7 years? 8 years? There really has not been one.
It was pretty much Bryce Perkins.
Maybe Brendan Armstrong for a cup of coffee.
A little bit. But he didn't have near the success. Who was it? Bronco? Was it Bronco? I think Bronco was the guy that said he rated quarterbacks on if they could win you championships.
That's how I rate him.
And there's only been a few quarterbacks here who's done that. Number 12, who just visited us, took him to an ACC championship. Mike Rowe took him to an ACC championship. And Bryce Perkins took him to the ACC championship game.
To the game.
And was Coastal Division champions, which is the only time they've done that. So, again, you got to have the right guy at the right time to lead a team to greatness.
This football team, guys, we are a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, August 31st, creeping up on us very quickly, and against Richmond here.
It's crazy to say this, a must-win ball game. Safe to say must-win ball game?
Oh, yeah, you got to beat Richmond. There's no question about it. And
I mean, you may be looking at must-win games in the first 3 or 4 to start.
The really must-win game is the following week at Wake Forest.
Yep.
I can't see this team having the success that it needs, that it wants to have if it can't beat Wake Forest on the road. And that won't be easy because not many people have figured out how to slow down Wake Forest offense. It's very unique, and Dave Clawson has been a mastermind of that offense. But I think Virginia has to win that game if they want to have the kind of season that they hope to have.
Kenneth Knuckles reaching out to us via email with some data from the 1970s football rankings for Division I. The viewers and listeners love their football. We appreciate all the viewers and listeners chiming in. What's in the hopper on JerryRatcliffe.com. The interview was absolutely spectacular.
It was fun, and we'll showcase that on the site.
There's a boatload of news just from the interview.
Oh, absolutely. And that interview will be available on there. We'll be writing daily about football all week. We'll keep an eye on basketball. There's going to be a lot of big visits in September, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. They continue to offer some players, and some of the fall sports are getting cranked up. And broke my heart this week when our good friend Mike Cubby Cubbage passed away after a long battle with cancer, and a couple of days ago, and we'll be trying to showcase his career 50 years in Major League Baseball.
Quarterback at UVA, standout baseball player at UVA, Mr. Lane High School.
Yeah.
Some would say the greatest athlete that has ever come from the Charlottesville area, Mike Cubbage.
Probably so, if you stop and think about it.
Spent many an afternoon, Mike Cubbage, drinking cold pops at the Glenmore Country Club bar.
He's a good golfer.
The 19-hole, hell of a golfer.
Yeah.
Had a house on either the 4th or 5th hole over in Glenmore. Recently moved with his wonderful wife, who was a fantastic philanthropist.
Jan,
through the Charlottesville area SPCA,
Mm-hmm.
a fantastic philanthropist for rescue animals.
right.
I believe to Hilton Head, South Carolina. When I saw the news that he had passed away, I was equally saddened.
Yeah, I had heard a rumor about it and wasn't sure. I was hoping it wasn't true, and then she contacted me and confirmed it, and it's just so sad. He went into the State Hall of Fame a year before I did, and I was so happy to see him get in, and then he was happy to see me get in the following year, and just had so many great times sharing stories and listening to him over the years, and great storyteller, great collector of baseball memorabilia.
One of the best baseball memorabilia collections out there. His basement, his man cave,
Yeah.
featured in media outlets everywhere.
Yeah. Big Ted Williams fan.
Yeah.
That was his hero.
Mike Cubbage, rest in power. Your influence still felt in Charlottesville and baseball professional circles, and of course at the University of Virginia. Hootie Ratcliffe's influence felt everywhere. The website is jerryratcliffe.com. If you want to see the Shaw Moore interview, it'll be archived there. It'll be archived wherever you get your social media and podcasting content. Thought it was fantastic. I want to thank Hootie Ratcliffe for setting up this show with a guy in Shaw Moore who, when I was growing up, was a guy that I looked up to because I was watching him from the seats at Scott Stadium or on the television when Virginia was a constant on the broadcast channels.
We'll have some more Virginia legends in here in
awesome.
the coming weeks.
It's absolutely awesome. Judah Wickhauer behind the camera. Thank you to Judah Wickhauer. For Hootie Ratcliffe, the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer. For our producer, Judah Wickhauer, my name is Jerry Miller, and this, The Jerry and Jerry Show. So long, everybody.